My name's Neal Polachek. I'm going to moderate this little session here. Next to me is Barry Smyth, co-founder of Consistently. I could read that. You could read that. Next to him is Lex. I'm not even going to say your last name. I just say Lex. Lex is from Navads. And Trevor Nadeau is from Turkey via Canada. So we have three folks representing really three different parts of the world. And we're going to talk about what it means for local to go global. And what I thought I'd start with first is the folks could share what they do as their business, but that's really not what this is about. It's really about what it means to take their business to a different country. And so, or have a business that's being built in America go to one of their countries. So I'd like you guys to comment on sort of the things you see in terms of people issues, business model issues, people might be compensation issues, stuff like that, business models. What are the things that you got to think about as you sort of export your business to another country that people out here might not be thinking about as they ponder that opportunity? Barry.
Well, I think the number one thing is local context. How local businesses operate in different countries. We all talk differently.
Yeah.
We what we call things in Australia, New Zealand, UK, Europe are very different to what the US.
The taxonomy stuff, essentially taxonomy.
Yeah. I forgot to bring my sight gag with me. I brought my thongs with me. I was going to ask the audience what they thought my thongs were, because thongs are very different things all over the world, right? For us, they're things you put on your feet and walk to the beach in.
Yeah.
But some other people call them something else.
Yeah. I've worn thongs too, but those are the ones on my feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, they call them flip-flops here, I think.
Right.
And, in New Zealand, they call them jandals. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's three very different uses, and you can really slip up with that.
Yeah.
Particularly in working in local, where you need to get that right, especially if you're writing content, things like that. So,
well, I want to get to that a little bit further down the road. Let's go a little higher level first, though, around sort of business practices, compensation models. What do you stumble upon if you go from, say, Australia to the States, or from the States to Turkey, Trevor? And first, let's talk business models. Then we can talk about your listing stuff, you guys, okay? Talk about business models, talk about culture issues. Lex?
Yeah, sure. I think we're in a very fast-moving industry where we don't, or in my personal experience, it's very difficult to judge how successful you're going to be in a specific country. And it's pretty impactful. If you really decide as a company to open up a French office, for instance, it's got a lot of legal implications, personnel. It's not something, if it doesn't work, that you can just shut down the business again. So you really have to think that through carefully, and we're a bootstrapped company, so we have mostly decided to centralize our expansion from our headquarters in Amsterdam, where we are accustomed to the local taxes, we understand how we have to run a business there.
Right.
By hiring national teams from our Amsterdam office, and once there's certain success, we actually decide to open up an office in another country, because it's, again, very impactful.
So you've just started to do that here in the States.
Also, yeah.
What are some of the things you sort of wish you had known before you started doing that? Not because it's not going to be successful, but because you might have avoided something.
Well, the U.S. has been a pretty good ride so far, so I haven't experienced a lot of difficulties,
so did you
a lot
get
of challenges.
Business licenses for your people to operate, and are you paying taxes? And
well, that's difficult. We don't have a LLC yet, right? So we still do everything centralized from legally and then financially from our Amsterdam office, and that's right now actually something we're getting advised. We're being advised. Right. So I cannot say what.
So you haven't done anything wrong yet. Yeah.
Right. No experience yet there.
No potholes.
It's something we have to decide upon right now, and we're having a firm who advises us there.
Okay, so. Trevor, you've operated in 3 countries now. Canada.
Yeah, well, I went to
Egypt?
Egypt in 2005 to work for Egypt Yellow Pages. And then we expanded into Turkey to open up a Turkish business, Turkey Yellow Pages. And I started a business recently called Local Knowledge, and I think the name is appropriate because without any local knowledge, if you're a international business or you're particularly in the local media industry, if you come into this great opportunity that everybody talks about Turkey and the Middle East, and you don't know anything about it, you're in for some big surprises. When I was with Yellow Pages in Egypt, as we expanded into Turkey, I could tell you if you invested 3 months into living there, you could probably save yourself millions and millions of dollars in mistakes. And I was part of a team that made millions and millions of dollars worth of mistakes opening up that business because it's such a unique market. And I know there's probably companies here who have tried to get into Turkey and have really, really scratched their head and left. Turkey is this fabulous country with a demographic profile that's 29 years old and 3 million businesses that aren't online. And there's a graveyard full of local media businesses who have tried to make it and have left.
Hey, Trevor, before you go too much more into Turkey, what about when you went from Canada to Cairo, and sort of what were the big cultural sort of adjustments you had to deal with?
Yeah, well, I used to work for Yellow Pages in Canada, and when I was recruited into Egypt Yellow Pages, and we were publishing Egypt Yellow Pages, Saudi Yellow Pages, and the Tislat Yellow Pages out of the UAE, Wayne Foster, the fellow who brought me on board, he goes, Trevor, you remember everything we learned about at Yellow Pages in Canada? He goes, forget it. Just forget it. It doesn't apply. And it was the truth, really. But what the frustrating parts of the business, there's other sides of things that give you so much joy working in some of these emerging markets, and the opportunities are immense if you can find the right mix and understand the market.
All right, so Lex, let's flip it over. Companies want to come do business in Amsterdam. Well, how would you advise them? Not in your business, so you wouldn't say don't come, but
in general.
Yeah. And what are things somebody would have to think about coming over to Amsterdam or Europe in general?
Well, I think most American, if an American company comes over to Europe, they mostly decide upon either the Netherlands or the UK to start their legal entity, so to say, and their entrance into the European market. And it also originates from, I guess, the fact that the Netherlands is a very, I would say, attractive market to start your business internationally is because of the tax treaties we have with pretty much all the countries in the world, which again originate from the fact that Shell is a Dutch company and is a full global operation. So it's relatively easy, I would say, for an American company to open up an Amsterdam office or a Dutch office, a Dutch legal entity.
Barry. American company wants to come to Australia.
Well, I think the first thing they need to start thinking about is that, Australia is not America, for starters. And there are vast differences between the two countries. We see that with the global players. They come into a country and they're just thinking like Americans. From the vast number.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that the scale in America is vastly different from the scale in Australia.
Yes.
So as an example, there's like 15,000 McDonald's in the United States, whereas there's only 1,200 in Australia. So, that thinking...
10x. Everything's about 10x.
It is, yeah. So, and also, we're a little behind in adoption.
Yeah.
Not really badly, but we are a little behind in adoption. So that's something that needs to be rethought.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about from a business perspective, our taxation system's a lot easier. So that's easier to understand.
What about hiring people? Is it tougher?
Yeah, it's a lot tougher. You know,
It's really tough. There are no employees. Don't bother coming.
I can give you some real life examples. So I've been running a search engine marketing conference in Australia for 10 years. That's something we do on the side. And we've had a number of people attending that conference over the 10 years. There's actually one guy that's been to every show in Sydney for the last 10 years, and every year he's at a different company. So that's just that millennial churn, right? So, you know, so that's the thing that you've got to equip yourself for, is that, and I guess this is a global problem, not just an Australia problem, but staff are hard to manage.
Yeah.
We chose to go down the contractor path because we didn't want to have to deal with
for people in Australia.
For people in
where
Australia.
where are your businesses?
Yeah. So all of our staff are virtual. And it's great.
Yeah.
We don't have to manage all of their day-to-day problems. So
That's exactly what we did in the United States.
So everybody in the U.S. for you is on contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Trevor, are you on contract with yourself?
Yeah. Well, I've got staff and I've got contracted call centers in Cairo and in Turkey.
What about in Europe hiring people? How tough is that, Lex? Good people.
Good people is tough everywhere.
Good people
right?
is tough everywhere. Okay.
But again, that varies widely per country again. I think there's a couple of things to consider for a U.S. company entering into a European market, and personnel and labor law is definitely something we should be high on the radar, and is widely different in every single country. Now, the Dutch have fairly recently opened up the labor law, whereby it's much easier to hire and fire people. But it used to be very stringent and long-term, you know, very long-term.
Hire them, you have them for life.
Pretty much, like in France, you do. Yeah. You know, you have to contribute to their pension for the rest of your life, even if you fire them.
You pay them the rest of their,
Or a small
Turkey's
portion.
the same.
What's that?
Turkey, it's very, very difficult to
Fire people?
yes.
Yeah. So, like, what about, you know, the sort of the data stuff, okay? There are data privacy issues that describe some of the differences you guys see in data privacy issues when, you know, here in the US, it's one country. You know, there's a lot going on in the EU with respect to data issues. Trevor, all three of you speak to the data issues. More stringent or less stringent?
I think ours are probably less stringent, but to be honest, it's not something that we need to generally worry about in our business.
Because?
Because all of our clients' information is publicly available. We just simply clean it.
Yeah.
You know?
So you don't have consumer data? Sorry? You don't touch consumer data?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
We don't touch consumer data either. All I do know is that if you comply to the German how do you call it? The German protection regulations around that, you're good everywhere in Europe.
So German is the high bar.
The highest, the most difficult, most most stringent and restrictive on consumer privacy.
Data issues?
Turkey, they're just starting to get involved in some data regulation, particularly in consumer, and moving towards business. Middle East, still a little bit of the Wild West. It's not too much regulation right now. Also, there's a lack of it, so I think that may be one of the reasons.
So all you guys do listing stuff, correct? So give us a sense of how good listings are in your domain, your particular country, and how good or how bad you see listing stuff outside of your countries. And what are the real challenges of getting that as good as it can be? Lex.
Yeah, I think Trevor should start that.
All right, Trevor.
He's the expert on the worst region in the world, I guess, right?
The business that we founded, or I founded, Local Knowledge, we're a business listing company, and we make a definition between a business listing and a local listing. And in Turkey and the Middle East, most businesses are registered under a business name, And in the Middle East, they probably just have a post office box and a phone number. And a business name in, say, the Middle East would be Mohammed's for Tourism and Transport LLC. But the doing business as name, or what you would see on their sign, might be Mohammed's Desert Tours. So this is the state of business listings in the Middle East. There's very, very few listings that are actually surfaced on the mapping ecosystems of the Middle East. And what has to happen is this data has to get transformed, and what we call it moving it from a business listing to a local listing. We're kind of a handcrafted business, if I can say that, because every listing that we work on, we actually have to make a phone call. You can't use auto geocoding in Turkey or the Middle East. Addressing structure is quite complicated. There isn't a point addressing database that's available in most places to do any auto geocoding, and if there were, it would be incomplete. So everything we do is very manual. I think one of the things that we're talking about here is if you're going to come into this region and get into the local media business, you have to understand that you got to be ready to work on the data if you want to have a quality product. And what we're doing right now, and I've seen this as being in the region for 12 years, compiling all this data, is that the companies that we're working with here, we're working with Yandex, we're working with TomTom, we're helping them granularize their data, make sure the geocodes are correct, and making sure that we've got their doing business as names as opposed to their registered business names. So you really got to be ready to work hard on the data, at least in Turkey and the Middle East.
How many locations would you guys say in your respective places have longitude, latitude sort of identifiers?
Hardly any.
Hardly any.
That's the first thing that we have to do is go and find the Latin long and add that into...
Because that's a universal language, right?
Yeah.
That is the only universal language, right?
I mean, on average, the data that we get, and this is coming from generally store locator data from a customer's website, on average, 46% of the data is incorrect.
So
Which is pretty
repeat that.
scary.
Repeat that. So
46% of the data that they give us from their store locator page data on their website is inaccurate.
So that means that if a consumer goes there 100 times, 46 times, they might get the wrong address.
It's more than 50 in Turkey. More than 50% in Turkey.
Lex, what's the number there?
Well, we manage over 500,000 listings globally, and it definitely differs per country. But I'd say, on average, anywhere between 40 and 50%.
So this is 2018. This problem has been talked about for Manish has been in this business for 20 years. Why is this still such an issue? 46% of it's wrong in Australia. 50. I mean, I can understand sort of Turkey and the Middle East because of the development, but even in Europe, the number's so bad. Why is that?
Very good question. It's got. I think there's a lot of things to it. Of course, location data quality, I think, is the key to our industry, to local, right? However, location data becomes richer and richer. You know, there's increased relevance for attribution of local data, which makes it also much more complex to curate that data and make sure it's correct. And there's no global reference database containing all the brands, for instance. Right, so all the major brands. So the owner of that data is the brand itself. So meaning that you have to engage with the brand, you have to make them aware that it's of the relevance of their location data quality and their presence, etc. And that's just not a real scalable model, right? It just takes a lot of time. And these brands, they have no way of being able to curate their own data, so to say. So that's obviously where this industry fits in, but it's not something which can be, luckily, it's not something which can be solved.
So I have a view that the customer experience is the next level of playing field that everybody's got to play in, right? Because most products are now commoditized and fungible, and I can buy shoes in any place, and it's the customer experience that's really going to matter. And if I go to somebody's site and a locator sends me to the wrong place, that destroys that customer experience. Before the customer experience can even be defined, it's already destroyed. So why are companies not paying more attention to these issues? Or are they, and there's just a ton of work?
Well, I'll give you an example. We were in a big insurance company doing a meeting about 2 weeks ago, and we ended up having a brand person there, the SEO person there. Who else did we have? I was trying to point my fingers.
Brand person.
So brand, you had SEO, you had a content person, and then there was someone from the general marketing department, and they were all arguing about who should pay for cleaning up their listings. The SEO guy was going, well, you know, I don't really care if people don't go to the shop because I want to drive people online. But I do understand that it gives me a map ranking boost because I've got, you know, all my listings cleaned. The brand person was horrified because her brand name had been utterly destroyed on
by
the
crappy listings.
By all these listings that were all incorrect. And then the content girl was going, oh, well, the description that's in that is not what we do. And it's like...
So did you lock him in a room and take away the key?
Oh my God, this is horrendous. This is such a bad user experience for our customers.
So what was, who wins it?
They're all still arguing about who should pay for it.
Yeah.
But they all know that they need it. But, you know, and that's a common problem we see in very big organizations.
So how do you give them a metric or a piece of data that says, here's what you're destroying by not spending the money to fix it?
That's hard to put a finger on, really.
But that would be the solution, right? If you could say, you know, 46% are wrong, missed opportunities, here's what you're losing out in the marketplace.
Yeah.
I think that there's a great difference between the US, now having much more experience in the US, versus Europe. US is way more advanced when it comes to digital solutions and local. So there's a lot of unawareness, even at brands in Europe, throughout Europe. Then once they're convinced, it's a budget issue. So who's going to pay for this? It's vastly unmeasurable as opposed to any of the other media spent, if that's the budget where it comes from. So, so they really have to firmly believe that this is relevant for the to optimize the consumer experience, and also that takes time.
Well, you know, Trevor's pointed out to me on more than one occasion that if you search for an ATM for one of the banks in Turkey, I think it is, and you follow the directions to that, you'll be in the Bosphorus Sea. I mean, isn't that, I mean, where does somebody in that bank go, okay, we got to fix this. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Trevor?
I've sat in the meetings and I've showed them, and they get offended that I'm showing them that their ATMs are in the water.
They hate it when you tell them that, don't they?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're embarrassing me. If I use Turkey as an example, I think the big opportunity really is not brands, it's SMBs. And I think we're coming to a point in time where there's a demographic shift that's happening right now, and I'm having these conversations in Turkey and in the Middle East with banks and governments.
Go ahead.
I think the person my age is handing off their business to their kids who are 25, who've grown up with a mobile phone in their hand, and they're going to go, my God, how come our business isn't on Google Maps or on Yandex? This is crazy. They're so busy running the business that they don't have the time, but they're not scared of doing this. So I think the timing is quite right. And if I told you how many businesses are actually on Google, everybody would be running towards to try and do it in the Middle East and Turkey right now. But I think what's also going to happen is I think it's going to get legislated. My business is based in the UAE. I have to renew my trade license every year, and this is crazy, so I'll share this. I have to pay $270 a year for my post office box. It's law. I have to have this. And I get 4 pieces of mail, if I'm lucky, a year in my post office box. In Dubai and the UAE, it's virtually impossible to find a small business on Google. Even the guys at Google Enterprise there will say, yes, it's so embarrassing. I believe that if they were to make this law, the sheikh there could, overnight, you can say, okay, you know what, everybody's renewing their trade license, you need a digital presence. You need to be on Google, you need to be on Apple, you need to be on Yandex, you need a responsive URL. I think something like this could actually become a reality, and I think it could domino into other countries, not just the emerging markets that I operate in. And I really do think it could move the needle of a country's GDP if every single business
But that would be
had a digital presence.
Would that be accounted GDP, and maybe some of the GDP doesn't want to be accounted for? Is that some of the reason people don't, at least in those countries, want to be found?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a minute amount. The call center team will often come across a business saying, "No, I don't want to be online." But in most cases, they do. They do.
So we have a.
Sorry,
go
I just
ahead.
wanted to add something to that as well. But you know, the global players like Google, Apple, and so on want to have good quality, clean directories, but they make it hard on smaller countries. Like Apple, for instance, you have to have 10,000 listings before they'll even talk to you. But no retailer in Australia's got 10,000 listings. We've actually had to turn to Navads and work with Navads to be able to offer Apple Maps Connect to our customers in Australia. So I think, you know, the big players need to start rethinking how they do business in smaller countries as well. Yeah, and Turkey's probably going to be the same as well, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, Trevor.
I think the data aggregation game has to change. We work with mapping companies. In Turkey, if one of our customers has 1 million listings, and they'll say, okay, here, this year we're just going to do 60,000 or 100,000 of these listings. We're going to validate them for them. It's a constant game of catch up, and I think the entire ecosystem of how a business gets itself online has to change.
Okay, 2 minutes we got.
Yeah.
Any questions? Before I get, if there are questions, share one aha moment when you realized you didn't know what you were thinking about when you were going global or somebody was coming to your market. Where you just saw something, you went, wow, they just don't get it. Barry.
I think the key that would be Apple.
Yeah, okay.
They're one of the biggest companies in the world, yet they put restrictions on small countries that are pretty quite stupid.
Yeah.
It's not an aha moment, it's an oh my God moment.
Yeah, okay. Lex?
Yeah, well, I would say Eastern Europe. That's where I had a aha moment. That the more eastern you go, the more it is like in your expert countries, in the Middle East. Data is very poor. That market is mostly not ready, I would say.
So you guys are in a business that has a life expectancy of 50 years because it's never really going to ever be fixed.
Exactly, right. And it needs to be continuously curated.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a continued need for this.
Yeah. Trevor, an aha moment?
If you're going to come into a market, don't send somebody and tell them to live there for about, or get them to live there for about 3 months just to experience the market. We opened up Turkey Yellow Pages. I was sitting in my office listening to a marketing manager talk to somebody, and she was going, Yellow Pages, Yellow Pages. And then she was saying P-A-G. At the end of the call, when she got off the phone, I walked out. I said, her name was Melissa. I said, what was that? She goes, pages is not a word in Turkish. We can't pronounce it. We can't say it. The next day, the company became yellow.com.tr. Pages came out of it. Really, you need to do some, there's fabulous opportunities in all these markets, but you really got to do some local, some groundwork or some reconnoitering.
Okay, let's give these guys a big hand, please.